This presentation provides information regarding the English as a Second Language services for English learner students in Shelby County schools, covering our program procedures and practices presented by Leah Dobbs-Black, ESL Program Supervisor. The objectives of this presentation are for participants to gain knowledge of the identification procedures and manners in which students are placed as an EL student into the ESL program. Furthermore, participants will gain an understanding of the federal mandates and court decisions that impact the education of immigrant and non-native English-speaking students. Who participates in ESL? ESL services are provided to any student who, when they completed their home language survey upon registering for school, identified that there is a language other than English that the student first learned to speak, that the student actively uses a language other than English, or that a language other than English is used in the home. A student is identified as an EL as a result of the responses given on the home language survey. At that point in time, if they indicated a language other than English on that home language survey, then a language screening assessment is administered, determining a student's English language proficiency level. The assessments that we use are the WIDA model for kindergarten students and the WIDA online screener for students in 1st through 12th grade. If a student enrolls on or before the first day of school, then we have 30 days to complete the assessment and identification process for a student. After the first day of school, when a student enrolls, we have to complete the assessment and identification process within 10 days of initial enrollment. The determination for placement into ESL and whether or not a student is to be considered an EL is made by an EL committee. This committee consists of the ESL teacher, a classroom teacher of the student's parent, a school's ESL liaison, and the school administrator. This team meets to determine whether placement into the program is appropriate for the student, and if so, the type and amount of service that the student will receive. This is communicated in an IELP, or the Individual English Learner Plan. An EL's plan is monitored at least quarterly, which is approximately every 9 weeks, every grading period. It is also rewritten every school year to address the changing linguistic and instructional needs of a student. And then when a student demonstrates proficiency in English on the Access for ELLs, then the committee meets and makes a determination of whether or not to exit the student from ESL, and the IELP then communicates the transition plan and monitoring plan for that student as they exit. Equal opportunity. An English learner student can be referred for and placed into special education and gifted education programs by following similar procedures used for all students and identification and referral for these programs. An EL can also be served through the PST team and other resource teams when it is viewed as needed, when a student needs academic intervention or other areas of need that a student may have. When a student is being discussed and decisions are being made regarding additional supports and instruction and intervention that a student needs, an ESL teacher must be included in those discussions and determinations. At the time of enrollment, while all students are required through county policies to present a birth certificate, immunization form, Social Security card, and proof of residence, via various legal requirements as listed below, as a school district, we are to make some exceptions to those requirements. It does not mean that a student does not have to prove that they reside in the district. We just have to provide other means for them to prove their residency in the district. Furthermore, for age determination, we would use records other than their birth certificate. Likewise, with an immunization form, they would be given a length of time to receive their vaccination record here in the state of Alabama. All of these provisions are guided under Title III law, McKinney-Vento, and guidance from the Department of Justice and the Office of Civil Rights. So it's not at all that students don't present such information. It's just that we are to allow other means for such documentation in order for a student to be enrolled. And we are to make exceptions at the time of enrollment when those items are not readily available. Also, under the area of equal opportunity, the immigration status of a student is not a consideration in registering a student for school, as schools are not agents of immigration. This is a determination and a decision of the Supreme Court in Plyler versus Doe back in 1982. Therefore, students do not demonstrate legal residency status or citizenship documentation or anything of those means in order to register for school, and we are not to ask for such documentation. Also, if a student does not have a Social Security number, then as a school district, we are to assign them a student-specific identification number in the school district. And you see here that that is covered under Section 3116 of Title III, as well as the McKinney-Vento Homeless Act. Regarding ESL services, parents of students identified as an English learner have the right to refuse or to deny ESL services. Even when the committee has presented that it's in the student's best interest for them to receive services, the parents can indicate that they do not wish for their student to receive them. However, even though a parent were to refuse or deny services, we are still obligated as the instructional team to provide accommodations to make language and content explicit and clear to the student so that they can acquire knowledge and language. Also, even though a parent refused services, their child still must participate in the English language assessment given annually until they have demonstrated proficiency in English. So a refusal of services is not a refusal of assessment. The student still has to continue to participate in the English language proficiency assessment. EL documentation. The EL documentation for a student includes the home language survey that was mentioned earlier in the presentation, a copy of the assessment results, whether that's the WIDA model, the screener, or the Access for ELLs, the individual English learner plan that includes the latest English language assessment results, the language identified as the home language of the student, the length of time a student has been in ESL, and then the instructional accommodations and assessment accommodations that are to be made for the student throughout the school year. This documentation is kept in a yellow folder in the student's cumulative file. Also, the Access for ELL's teacher report is filed in the student's cumulative record as well. Therefore, any instructor and teacher of an EL can go and review this information in the cumulative record. If you are a teacher of an ESL student, you should receive a copy of the student's IELP as a result of contributing information about the accommodations that will be provided in developing that plan, so that throughout the year you can review and revisit that plan, making certain that effective instructional strategies and accommodations have been provided for the student. The English Language Proficiency Assessment. We administer the Access for ELLs annually in the spring of the year, typically in February or March. We utilize the WIDA model as a tool for progress monitoring, particularly for students where we have seen academic concerns or learning concerns. We utilize the WIDA model as a way to demonstrate that the student is continuing to progress in language or not, and whether or not that language progression or lack of language proficiency is contributing to the difficulty the student is having academically and in their learning. These proficiency assessments include assessment in the areas of listening, speaking, reading, and writing. And then in these areas, the language that is covered in the assessment are from the standards, the English Language Development Standards that cover social instructional language, the language of language arts, the language of math, the language of science, and the language of social studies. Therefore, in these areas, the students are not assessed on discrete skills of the content areas, but rather the assessment looks at their comprehension and understanding of the language utilized in learning in these content areas, as well as in the areas of social instructional language. The WIDA screener model and Access for ELLs provide scores that indicate a student's overall proficiency in English, as well as a comprehension result, an oral language result, and then a score in each of the 4 language domains. Therefore, this allows teachers to see areas of strength, particular language domains where students have demonstrated higher levels of proficiency and or areas of lower language proficiency, so that we recognize further instructional accommodations and strategies that need to be used, as well as areas that students are developing more quickly and in their language acquisition. The proficiency levels that are reported on the assessment results range from levels 1 through 6. And you see here they range from entering as the beginning descriptor at level 1 to reaching at level 6. So to further explain the variance between entering, emerging, developing, expanding, bridging, and reaching, at the simplest level is that a student at level 1 is using simple words, phrases, and very basic sentences to communicate, and is in need of lots of visual support and explicit language use and language representation in their instruction. Then as the student attains more English language proficiency, their language will be demonstrated in more expansive forms, moving from simple sentences to complex sentences, to using very simple words in communicating, to more specific and technical vocabulary, specifically in academic areas. And we will see more expansive forms verbally in writing, as well as in oral presentations in their speech. In order to exit ESL, a student has to attain a 4.8 or higher on the Access for ELLs. This is a statewide criteria. Therefore, any student who is an EL in the state of Alabama must make a 4.8 or higher in order to exit from the ESL program and services. Upon attaining a 4.8 on the Access for ELs, the student is exited from ESL and then monitored for 4 years before we send home a success letter to the parents. We will communicate with the parents annually in this 4-year monitoring period, making them aware of the progress. And as a classroom teacher of a student who is being monitored in this 4 years post-exit, you will be asked to provide information about the progress and performance of the student. Should there be an area of concern, and particularly a concern that the student's language has regressed, the student could be returned to the ESL program and reclassified as an EL student. This would be the result of a committee decision following a reassessment of a student's language proficiency level, and then a conversation about the additional supports and needs that a student had instructionally based on English language proficiency. With the state assessment program, all ELs participate in the statewide testing program. In the specific grade levels that are required to participate in the statewide testing program, an EL in their first year of school can be exempt from the reading portion, but they must participate in the math portion and the science portion as required for the various grade levels for all students. Teacher requirements. In the Shelby County Schools, all of our ESL teachers who work with EL students in the ESL program are certified teachers. All of these teachers have had extensive training in ESL instruction, and 95% hold certification in ESL. Furthermore, in our school district, our ESL department seeks to provide professional development opportunities for all teachers regarding the instruction of EL students. Therefore, I encourage you to be on the lookout for information regarding participating in a PLC, just where the focus would be the instruction of EL students, or in ongoing professional development opportunities that we provide regarding the support and instruction, culturally responsive instruction of EL students. The program goals of our ESL EL program in Shelby County Schools are to provide high quality language instruction for EL students, focusing on the development of English across the 4 language domains of listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Furthermore, we will utilize curriculum and materials for instruction that are designed and developed using evidence-based strategies effective for English learners. We will also provide support to the mainstream classroom teacher of an EL, as well as providing support to the EL student within the mainstream classroom content. Communication. As a school district and as a school, we have a legal obligation to communicate effectively with the parents of EL students. In so doing, we are to provide forms, documents, and school manuals in a language that is easily understood by the parent. That occurs through translation services for written communication. In addition to translation of written documentation, we provide interpretation services. Interpretation services are to be provided as needed for parent conferences, meetings, and phone calls. Our ESL office assists schools in providing first language support for parents. Therefore, you can contact us if you have a need of an interpreter for a meeting, a phone call, a conference, a parent activity in your school, or if there's written communication that is being made that needs to be translated, you can request assistance with that as well. If you have any questions or concerns regarding English learners and the ESL program, please feel free to contact me, Leah Dobbs Black. You see here my name and number as well as my email address. You can contact me either way, by phone or via email. We do have a resource teacher in our office. Her name is Cindy Cox. Again, you can reach out to her if you had any instructional concerns, would like any strategies or resources or materials. Dolly Chavez is our bilingual office assistant. So she is a native speaker of Spanish. So in communicating in Spanish with parents, she is our first contact. You can contact her for support or contact her to request an interpreter, as she facilitates scheduling interpreters of all of the various languages, not only Spanish, when needed for meetings and conferences. Margaret Carlisle is our data manager. And if you had any need of EL data for statistical reasons, maybe you're in graduate school, or had any questions regarding the makeup of our EL student body, she could help provide that information. Furthermore, if you had need of an interpreter or other supports from our office and the rest of us were not available, she is our backup in assisting the school in so doing. Feel free, please, to contact any of the four of us for support and assistance. We are happy to help any way that we can. We hope you have a great year in serving all students, and particularly our English learners. Thanks so much.